this people-powered town hall. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you to Climate Justice San Antonio for organizing this gathering, and to CPS Energy and Councilwoman Sandoval for participating in this very important conversation with the community. It's a big honor for me to be invited to facilitate this conversation. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Marisol Cortez, and I'm a writer, I'm an educator whose work is rooted in movements for earth protection and liberation. Along with Greg Harmon, I'm one of the co-editors of Deceleration, and I'm also a professor of practice at UTSA in the English department. If you haven't heard about us, I'll just share a little bit about Deceleration. We are a grassroots media project that covers environmental justice news, analysis, and praxis for the South Texas region. We aim to create a space where we can really go to the roots of climate disturbance in historical systems of injustice, while at the same time expanding public imagination around solutions for protecting and creating the commons. We aspire to create a community space for sharing the ideas and practices required for a just transition, a shift away from an economy based on dirty energy and exploitation to one that puts people and planet at the center. That's what makes this conversation so important, because we know that as a community we're facing critical decisions about how we produce power on a global timeline that feels increasingly short. In that context, it's no small thing that San Antonio has a public rather than private utility. Conversations like this are critical forms of direct democracy, ways that we who live here in this place, we whose children and grandchildren and nibblings will be most impacted by the decisions that we make today, can have some small say in those decisions. With that intention in mind, I wanted to walk you through kind of what tonight will look like, and then go over a few basic principles that are guiding the way that I'm approaching moderation for tonight. So first, we're going to have an opening statement from Isabella from Climate Justice San Antonio, just kind of outlining some of the primary issues and stakes for tonight. Then we're going to have some comments from Councilwoman Sandoval. Then that'll be followed by a presentation on fracked gas from one of our panelists, Christopher Mayoraga. And then we're going to open it up to questions, comments, critiques, discussion, starting with some opening remarks from our panelists, whom I'll introduce at that point. And then we'll turn it over to you for the questions and thoughts that you have brought today. And so we should have a good hour or so for that more kind of free-form discussion. And then finally, after that, Lillian from Climate Justice SA will close us out. So for those of y'all that came tonight, we hope that you are full of ideas, questions, thoughts, comments, critiques, and there's actually a number of different ways that you can share those with us. First, if you're able to come, do we have a mic set up at the front? Are we still doing that?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So if you're able to come up to the front, if you feel comfortable doing that, Antonia has the mic. But if you have mobility issues or you're just more comfortable remaining seated, that's fine too. She can just hold your hand up and then she can come to you. Alternately, if you are more comfortable writing a question rather than speaking it, that's also totally possible. Yeah, you should have, I think there's note cards at the back at the table when you first came in to your right that you can pick up. And so if you'd like to pose a question or make a comment anonymously in writing, do that, hold it up. And are you also the card person, or is that Leo? Okay, so yeah. So look for Antonia. And we do want to make sure that everybody who wants to speak has the opportunity to do so. And so we're going to be asking the panelists and audience members alike that you limit the time that you're speaking to 3 minutes. We do have a timekeeper, that's Aaron, who's sitting right in the front, and he has some note cards. So at 2 minutes, he'll hold up the yellow note card, and then at 3 minutes, he'll hold up the red card. And the last thing I just wanted to say before we hear from Isabella is that we want this conversation to be lively, engaging, honest, and passionate, but also productive, right? And so what does that mean? How am I thinking of that term? And how do we get there? And so just a couple of guiding sort of principles for a passionate but productive conversation. One is one mic, one voice, so of course no interrupting, let people have their say. Two, embracing that there is going to be disagreement, tension, conflict, right? But so long as it's engaged in a process of collectively trying to further understanding of the issues and what's at stake, then that's great. We want that. Getting passionate is okay, getting personal is not. Keep your focus on the issues, on systems, right? On policies, on impacts. If you start feeling yourself getting upset, just take a moment. Come back to your body, maybe grab that note card, pause, and then write it down, because that's probably a really good thing to discuss, right? The last thing I'll say is just that sometimes conversations about energy can get very technical. So as much as possible, explain where you're coming from, right? Like translate technical concepts for a general audience, for a community audience. Be very specific as you can, be concrete, so that we can understand your position. And so I might be asking you to clarify things, right, if I sense that maybe the audience isn't following something. So that's all from me. I'm going to turn it over to Isabella, and she's going to speak for about 3 minutes, with just some opening thoughts. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, and thank you for coming to our People Power Town Hall. We have some really knowledgeable panelists here, and I know I'm super excited to hear from them on these super important issues, so I'll keep it brief. My name is Isabella Briseño. I'm a local educator, a member of We Power SA, which is a group within San Antonio DSA, and I'm also a member of CJSA, which is Climate Justice San Antonio. CJSA is a coalition of organizations and individuals focused on fighting the climate emergency by holding public utilities such as CPS Energy accountable and uplifting our community to fight against the climate crisis. The climate crisis has long ago come to a critical point, and each day we go without action is another step backwards. That action needs to include the community's voice. That means those most impacted, Black and brown people, poor people, working people, indigenous people. These should be the people taking the charge on conversations. So that's another reason I'm super excited for tonight. This town hall is a unique and exciting opportunity to give your input and hear from multiple sources about the future of the Spruce coal plant as they transition away from coal. I encourage you to participate in our live Q&A. But as it was said, there are some note cards in the back if you are not comfortable speaking aloud. And please do not hold back. I wouldn't. With that, I'm going to remind you that refreshments, as well as the San Antonio Justice Charter, give it a signature if you're registered to vote in San Antonio, are in the back where you entered. I'm going to hand it off to District 7 Councilwoman Anna Sandoval for a brief statement before we get started.
Thank you. Thank you, Marisol, for that beautiful opening. My name is Anna Sandoval. I represent District 7 for the City of San Antonio, and welcome to District 7. You are here now. You practically had this at my house. I live about 5 or 6 blocks away, but I'll leave a little bit before the event ends just because I have a baby to get to bed, as you might know. I guess a couple of things I'd like to share. First of all, I do also want to recognize the other members from different council offices that are here with us tonight. So it's not just me and my staff taking back the messages that we hear today. I also see Dr. Juan Valdez, who's here from the mayor's office. Thank you, Juan, for being here. We also have a representative from the District 5 Council Office, Justin. Thanks for being here. And a representative from District 2 from Councilwoman Q. Rodriguez's office. Thank you for being here as well. So, Pastor Joseph Garrett, thank you for letting us use your wonderful space here. So, I have to say, when I first came onto council, there were very few people talking about climate change. In fact, I felt like it was me and Doug Melnick and his team. Doug Melnick is the head of the Sustainability Office. I'm really glad for the work of organizations like yours and the work that Dee Dee does to make this a broader conversation. One win that we've had recently, well, I don't want to say we signed the Paris Climate Accords because we were not there signing the Paris Climate Accords, but we endorsed them as a city council. We also adopted a climate plan, and we have been rightly criticized for not moving quickly enough on that plan. I will tell you that right now we are actively, that's my office and members of the Office of Sustainability and the Mayor's office, are actively working to implement one of the first regulatory measures that's called for in that plan. And we hope to have your voices and your support as we move forward with that. It is called benchmarking, or as someone on my team accidentally said the other day, bench warming. That's not what it is. What it is basically monitoring your energy use. It is as simple as that. Monitoring your energy use if you're a big building and comparing yourself to other buildings. And a little bit of that information gets shared with the public because sometimes peer pressure and public pressure is what makes us act. And that is the premise of this ordinance, but it is also to help us save energy. Who wouldn't have liked to have a little bit more energy to go around in that winter storm that we experienced? All of us would have. So we've got buildings in San Antonio that are huge, 100,000 feet, 50,000 square feet. If those buildings could save just a little bit of energy, that means that the rest of us are going to be a little bit better off when things are tight. So we're working to bring that forward. I do hope that happens before the end of this year. If that succeeds, then we pave the way for more actions from the climate plan to come forward. That is the first one. To me, it is sort of the bellwether of whether or not we're going to be successful with this plan. So I'm putting, I can't say all my energy into it because I'm also working on other things, but I'm putting a lot of my energy into that. And thank you, Rudy. I know your team is going to be absolutely critical to helping us implement that. The thing that actually was a win, this is not regulatory, but it is funding for, you guys are really quiet tonight. Okay, I know you said brief, but I'm going to have to play a game here because you guys did. Yeah. I heard someone say that you should be passionate tonight and that you should not hold back. So, based on what I told you about energy benchmarking, who's excited about energy benchmarking? Yeah, right? Okay. All right. Okay. Next thing, who was following the development of the city budget by any chance? Oh my God. And does not work for a council member. Okay. All right, so yes, we got, more money for this, more money for that, a few more sidewalks that are going to get fixed. But what I was really most excited about, and I'm so grateful to the council for supporting this request that I put forward, was to set aside some dedicated money, not a ceiling, but what I call a floor for climate action work, climate mitigation. And I call it the Resiliency, Energy Efficiency, and Sustainability Fund, only because the acronym is REES. That's the last name of my executive secretary. So it'll help me remember it. And this fund, it's the first time we do this, and I believe we may be the only city in Texas that has a dedicated fund for this kind of stuff. We know that Colorado has it, that Portland, Oregon has something like this, but in Texas, we are the first ones. So when you pay your CPS bill and you pay that step surcharge, which CPS does great things with, they give us 14%. And I kind of think that that 14% should not go back to streets, sidewalks, police, as much as we need that money for that. But that money is going to be dedicated to doing the things that the city can do when it comes to climate action. So I was going to thank you, but you guys don't really have anything to do with that. But so thanks to the council members for supporting that. And that comes out to about $9 to $10 million a year that we will be dedicating to climate action. What does that mean? The initial proposal that we put forward and that council has agreed to covers 4 key areas. One of them that I'm tremendously excited about has to do with grants to small organizations. Grants that will do things like educate the community, that will do things like small demonstration projects about how to reduce pollution, how to reduce greenhouse gases. We're also going to try to get more money from the federal government, the Inflation Reduction Act. We have to be in Washington. We have to have full-time people there trying to bring that money home. There's a few other things that it'll do, but we're hoping to kick it off and start to get money out the door to those small organizations to get this granted. So that's something I wanted to share with you. I want to thank the organizations that are hosting this event for talking about these really important topics. Fracking. You're going to go give a whole lecture, so I'm going to say very little about it except that it must end, and we must, if you've ever seen one of those documentaries on fracking, it's just like, how can this be occurring in our world today with the technology that we have, with the science that we know? So yeah, let's find another way. Thank you very much for coming to talk to us about this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And that's actually a really great segue to the presentation that will follow by Christopher Mayoraga on fracked gas.
Good evening. Hi everyone, my name is Christopher Mayoraga, and I'm here to give a short overview of natural gas, or what is more aptly called fracked gas. Much of what I learned about electricity generation comes from my time working at Rewiring America, a national nonprofit focused on the clean energy transition. I now work as a high school teacher where I hope to inspire more young people to join the fight for a livable planet. So energy and electricity generation are topics that touch all of our lives, yet many of us know very little about how it all works. For starters, the term natural gas is used by many in the utility industry. This term, however, is a marketing term pushed by the fossil fuel industry. The word natural deceives the public into thinking the fuel is more benign than it actually is. In reality, this fossil fuel is procured through a process known as hydraulic fracturing, also known as fracking, which has harmful environmental impacts that will be discussed later in the presentation. Because of this, many advocates have suggested calling this gas something more accurate, such as fracked gas, methane gas, or fossil gas. Across the country, fracked gas is used in many different applications. 37% of the end use of gas goes towards electric power, which is most relevant to our discussions today. However, I'd also highlight the residential and commercial sections of this chart, which combined make about 26% of the total end uses. Gas is piped through our neighborhoods and used for cooking, heating homes and buildings, and occasionally for other appliances such as water heaters and clothes dryers. As we'll see throughout the presentation, all of these applications carry risks to our health and the planet. Back in February, the CPS Energy Board of Trustees passed a resolution directing the Rate Advisory Committee to look into transitioning from coal to, quote, lower emissions, cleaner alternatives by 2030. But is frack gas really a cleaner alternative? We know that frack gas has a negative impact on climate change. Frack gas emits carbon dioxide, or CO2, the greenhouse gas most of us think of as being associated with global warming. Because gas emits less CO2 than coal, many have come to think of it as a cleaner fuel. However, we can't forget that frack gas is composed mainly of methane, which is also a greenhouse gas. Methane has more than 80 times the warming power of carbon dioxide over the first 20 years after it reaches the atmosphere. While climate scientists sound the alarm about our short window of time for action, methane emissions are still rising. Additionally, frac gas pipelines allow for methane leaks to occur, polluting our air. A study published in the peer-reviewed journal Environmental Science and Technology found that methane leaks are more likely to occur in communities of color and low-income communities. In our own homes and buildings, gas-powered cooking appliances directly expose people to their emissions, which can include formaldehyde, carbon monoxide, and nitric oxides that can trigger asthma, coughing, wheezing, and difficulty breathing, occasionally resulting in hospitalization. So if frac gas carries all these risks, why do we still rely on it so heavily? The argument often posed by CPS Energy is that it is a reliable fuel. We can depend on it even when it's not windy or sunny. And while it may be true that frac gas is less variable than wind or solar, it still has a reliability problem. If we think back to Winter Storm Uri in February 2021, conservative media outlets and government officials were quick to blame renewable energy sources for the massive power outages. However, a report by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission found that frac gas plants made up 58% of all outages during Winter Storm Uri. Proponents of frac gas often fail to see the full picture associated with the fuel. When we consider the cost of burning gas, we should heed the advice of the Union of Concerned Scientists and also consider the hidden costs. For example, 25% of today's global warming is due to methane. A study by the city of San Antonio found that 24 deaths annually are due to air pollution. These hidden costs to the environment and our health are making less and less sense considering the price of frac gas. While natural gas prices continue to increase, the prices of renewables are steadily decreasing. Although renewables have some hidden costs associated with them as well, we have to remember our climate goals. At this point, those who are concerned about the climate agree. In order to have a shot at remaining within 1.5 degrees Celsius of global warming, we must leave all fossil fuels in the ground. In August, President Biden signed the Inflation Reduction Act into law. This law provides $128 billion for renewable energy and grid energy storage, $14 billion for home energy efficiency upgrades, and grants for electric power transmission. This law also heavily invests in reducing energy costs for families by providing rebate programs and tax credits for those who switch from gas-powered appliances like stoves and furnaces to efficient electric options. Now that the federal government has acted, it's time for communities like San Antonio to follow suit and take advantage of all of this funding. CPS Energy has many stakeholders, and the environmental community is one of them. Another stakeholder is the business community, who is sometimes at odds with the environmental community. Prominent examples exist, however, of businesses coming on the side of climate action. The CEO of Enel, the second largest power company in the world, has come on the side of moving away from natural gas for electricity and home heating. Instead, he says that gas should be reserved for industrial uses like chemicals, ceramics, and glass. Renewable energy technologies are simply more cost-effective at this point. The CEO of Deloitte, the global consulting firm, told the World Economic Forum in May 2022, economics is on the side of a low-emissions future. Deloitte's analysts found that inaction on climate change would cost the world $178 trillion over the next 50 years. On the other hand, swift action to zero out global greenhouse gas emissions by 2050 could add $43 trillion to the global economy over the same period, and according to the analysis, plant the seeds for a green industrial revolution. The solutions we're proposing are proven and effective. Community solar, which allows residents who can't install solar panels on their roofs to reap the benefits of clean energy. Microgrids, or localized grids that can disconnect from the traditional grid to operate autonomously, boosting our climate resilience. And energy efficiency, so we can lower our total energy demand and reduce our total emissions as a community. I urge the leaders of CPS Energy to take a stand against converting the Spruce coal plant to a frac gas plant and move forward with true clean energy options. Let's send the message to national and global leaders that San Antonio stands on the side of energy equity and justice. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christopher. I apologize. I meant to introduce you before your presentation, but you did a little bit of that, and I'll come back to you. in this next part where I'll be introducing all of the panelists. And so we'll shift to that. I'm going to introduce you to each one, and then each person will have 2 minutes then to offer some preliminary commentary, and then we'll turn it over to y'all. So I'll start with Anacua Garcia, who serves as the Policy and Campaigns Coordinator for Southwest Workers Union. And she's worked to fight for reproductive justice, voter outreach and education, climate justice, and transgender rights. She currently sits on the San Antonio Climate Action and Adaptation Plans Equity Committee and on CPS Energy's Rate Advisory Committee. She lives on the east side with her 13-year-old companion animal and her husband. And then to the right of Anacua, we have Adrian Shelley, who is a native Texan from the city of Houston. He is the Director of Public Citizens Texas Office, which works on issues including clean energy, environmental enforcement, and ethics reform. Adrian has a law degree from the University of Texas and previously served as the Executive Director for Air Alliance Houston. He enjoys spending time with his family, reading, playing music, growing food and other plants, and the outdoors. And then now, very sorry that I missed you earlier, Christopher. Christopher Mayoraga is an educator and clean energy advocate. He worked as a researcher at the nonprofit Rewiring America, where he collected case studies of cities across the country who are doing well in terms of their transition to clean energy. He's a big proponent for electric vehicles and heat pumps due to their ability to run on clean energy and potential cost savings compared to gas vehicles and furnaces. And then we have Rudy Garza, who is the president and CEO for CPS Energy, the nation's largest municipally owned electric and natural gas utility. Rudy has more than 25 years of experience as a leader in the utility industry and has served in both the public and private sectors over the course of his career. He's the first Hispanic leader to hold the position. When Rudy served as interim president and CEO for 10 months, he successfully led the company to the approval of the first rate case in 8 years, approval for the next phase of energy efficiency and conservation programs, and discussions with the Board of Trustees and the Rate Advisory Committee on future generation planning. Rudy joined CPS Energy in 2012 and previously served as Chief Customer and Stakeholder Engagement Officer and as Senior Vice President of Distribution Services and Operations, where he oversaw the maintenance and construction activity of the electric distribution system. He's also served the company in the role of Vice President of External Relations. Rudy has a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and a Master of Business Administration from UNT, University of North Texas. He continues to serve his community through multiple board roles, including the Archdiocese Hope for the Future, the Antonian School Council, Brooks Development Authority, the San Antonio Chamber of Commerce, Epicenter, Greater SATX, and serves as UT Austin alma mater as an advisory board member for the School of Electrical Engineering. So thank you very much to all of these panelists, and at this time, I'll invite y'all, we'll go in the same order. You have about 2 minutes to make any preliminary comments you'd like to open up the larger discussion.
Hello, thank you, Marisol. My name is Anacua, my pronouns are she, her. And I have the great privilege of representing Southwest Workers Union and our member base. And I want to thank Denise Hernandez for being here and thank Councilman Jerry Rodriguez for appointing me to the Rate Advisory Committee at CPS Energy. Didi and I are there every third Thursday, doing our thing, fighting for climate justice. And that is what essentially is the heart of Southwest Workers Union. And long before I was there, I think in Councilwoman Sandoval brought up, in the 90s, climate justice was kind of not really heard of. And I like to think that, and I know that Southwest Workers Union was a big pioneer in establishing climate justice and the plight of frontline working families, to educate them, to show them, of futures that can exist outside of the extractive one that we exist in. That reality is a daunting task, I will tell you all. the way we work in our community is to make sure that we are keeping the voices of the most impacted at the front. And with that, it doesn't just mean to educate and inform them, but we also have to be there for them in real time. And especially since COVID-19 and Winter Storm Uri, we really doubled down on that. Long before the moratorium on disconnections was ending, we established a residential ratepayer fund to help relieve member debt. We were able to fundraise and put out almost $30,000 in utility debt relief from fundraising in our community. And so I would love to talk more about that. And so that's what I have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Anacua. Well said. I think we all have a lot to say. Marisol, thank you for the introduction. I'm Adrian Shelley, he, him. I'm the Texas Director of Public Citizen, Houston native. I did go to undergrad here in San Antonio at Trinity University, so it's nice to be back here. Also got to thank other colleagues here tonight, our host, Pastor Garrett, my incomparable colleague, Didi Belmaris, our climate justice organizer here in San Antonio, my peers in CJSA, and our friends at CPS Energy who organized the event tonight. So, and all of you for being here. You know, we're all here because we share the same ultimate final vision for San Antonio, right? Which is clean energy that is affordable and reliable, right? And it's within our grasp, and it's not that far off in the future, really. And the real question is, how do we get there, and how quickly does it happen, right? And as we know, the climate crisis and, you know, the public health imperative of getting off of fossil fuels means that we really don't have much time, right? But there are also opportunities that we can take advantage of if we act quickly and decisively. And I'm talking here about the Inflation Reduction Act, which my colleague Chris already mentioned. There are billions of dollars of opportunity in the Inflation Reduction Act. It's the biggest piece of federal legislation we have ever seen on the climate crisis, and it can do so much for us here in San Antonio if we act quickly, decisively, and leapfrog over the gas conversion and, you know, move directly into the clean energy solutions. So I'm going to talk some numbers and some jargon. Forgive me for that if I lose you a little bit. The message here is that there's just an amazing amount of money available to us in the form of grants and loans. And the quicker we act, the more of them we get access to. So what are they? Let's start with an EPA grant program for greenhouse gas reductions. This is a $4.75 billion pot of money. And if CPS Energy partners, probably with the city of San Antonio, could also be Bexar County, less likely the state of Texas, but if it partners with San Antonio, it can get access to funding if it develops a plan to reduce greenhouse gases by September of 2026, so just a couple of years now, and this plan could be to reduce GHGs by retiring the coal plant, right? So that's grant funding that is available to us. There's also loan.
And you know, we're gonna, you know, I think we're gonna get where we need to be, and I appreciate it. I know I see my red card. I want to acknowledge Reed Williams, who is the chair of our Rate Advisory Committee, of course, Didi Anacua. There's a lot of folks who put a lot of time and effort into learning about our industry to help provide input, and you know, we couldn't do this without them. So I really appreciate the input. We're doing the best we can to get where we need to be, and I think we're on a good path. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all the panelists for those opening comments and thoughts. This time, we're excited to hear what y'all have brought.
We do right by the environment, but we're real thoughtful about who we partner with. to ensure that, you know, the expectation of us is the same expectation that we have of those that we do business with. Again, as a publicly owned entity, I would expect our customers to expect us to do the right thing in that regard.
Thank you for that question. I know that was more a question directed to CPS, but if any of y'all have any thoughts that you'd like to add.
Yeah, you know, I'll just add one thing onto that, right? Which is, you know, if we take advantage of some of these kind of production tax credit-like opportunities out there, you know, what if we took some of those savings and put them away into a fund, you know, like a responsible, you know, cradle-to-grave fund, right? So we were talking about manufacturing, right? If we manufacture solar panels domestically, we get an extra 10% credit for that. So what if we took that and put it into, you know, like a cradle-to-grave fund so that we ensured responsible disposal of those, you know, those assets at the end of their life?
Can I ask you to explain cradle to grave? Just because it's really cool, actually.
Yeah, so just looking at the entire life cycle of, you know, a solar panel, right? As Mr. Garza was just telling us that they are already doing, right? You know, the idea with a fund at the beginning, right, would be, you know, that we have the money in place, right, so that no matter what happens in the future, you know, the money is there, it's in an account, it will allow us to pay for responsible disposal, you know, deconstruction, disposal, remediation of the land, right, and, you know, the term, sorry for the jargon, cradle to grave, meaning, you know, from the building of the equipment all the way until its final usage, dismantling, and restoring back to the natural state, right, of the land.
Thank you very much for that. Next question, and I'll just say, if you see me like typing on my phone, it's because I'm taking notes. That's how I like process information. Molly, yes, and then I saw him behind me.
What about other methods to help our climate crisis, such as halting the destruction of the tree canopies citywide or at parks, like what the city of San Antonio is planning on doing at Breckenridge Park? Our air quality at moderate non-attainment is not getting any better. It's getting severe and more severe. And the city mayor's office and city council is not putting a stop at the elimination of Breckenridge Park trees. The trees may be a small part of mitigation, of course, but it's something that the EPA will be regulating.
I'm not sure if Councilman Sandoval is still here.
But other representatives are here.
Well, yeah, so I was literally in a meeting on a number of climate initiatives with the city today and where CPS Energy might play a role. I think you're going to hear more in the very near future. There's a presentation to council at B session on December 14th, where they're going to be talking about their tree canopy policy with the city. What I can't, and CPS Energy I think plays a role in that. There's a big effort right now to create an arboretum in San Antonio, which, you know, obviously, you know, I think would be a great thing for our community. We've got one of the largest tree programs in the city. We give away, you know, thousands of trees a year, and I know the city's got, I think, $5 or $6 million that they have available for, you know, canopy programs as well that they're trying to actually get going. So I do think our community is focused on this as an opportunity. I have my own board members of CPS Energy asking, hey, can we do carbon, you know, what they're calling kind of carbon sinks, where, you know, that's why we're interested in maybe partnering with the potential Arboretum project, because the more trees we plant, the more, you know, carbon dioxide we get out of the air. So it's something I'm personally and we're supportive of at CPS Energy, and I feel like based on what I heard today, I think the city has got a pretty good plan.
Are they going to be replacing them with the same size trees that they're going to be eliminating?
Yeah, I think that's probably part of the conversation that's going to happen here in the near
Did
future.
you want to let them respond since all three of them are here?
I can respond. Molly, I know that you've been. Molly, I know that you've been an active stakeholder in the conversation on Breckenridge Park. So something I do want to mention is that the resiliency fund that Councilwoman Sandoval initiated and is now part of the budgeting process is that there's going to be money dedicated to reduce the urban heat island effect. So that includes increasing the tree canopy, especially in the urban core, as to your specific question on Breckenridge Park, I think that would be a question directed to the city department, which would be Parks and Recreation.
Just as a follow-up question to that, does anybody know, either folks that participated in the climate action adaptation plan or other, community efforts within the city, is, are trees something that the CAP looks at? Or is there any kind of climate accountability in, for example, the park's decision around tree canopy in Breckenridge Park? Just if anybody has that information.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
I guess it's a sort of a two-part question. One is, in the CAP, in the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan that the city developed, does it look at tree canopy or carbon sinks, that would be related to trees? Is that part of that plan? And then I guess the second part of the question is whether, the Parks Department has any sort of climate accountability built into decisions that they're currently making around tree cover in Breckenridge Park. Meredith. Oh, sorry.
Marisol, yes, so the way that the mitigation strategy is labeled in there is to increase biodiversity, and so it does address, not just tree canopy, but everything. And I know that Doug's not here today, but they do meet with all of the heads of the departments in the city, so including Parks and Rec. And I believe that they're developing different goals for each department and working with them directly to see how all of their projects either help or if they need to start looking at the cap of their different projects. But yeah, it is in there.
You said that there was going to be a December 14th meeting? Where is that at?
I'm Meredith McGuire. I was on the Water and Natural Resources Committee and the CAP initial preparations. And we definitely talked a lot about these connections. I don't know what happened to it after the Chamber of Commerce took over, so they may have eliminated a lot of what we proposed, but I'm glad to hear that a lot of those things are moving forward now.
The last thing I want to add related to the climate action and adaptation plan is that we've instituted, or City Council has instituted, two committees that are filled by residents and appointed by council, and that's the Equity Committee. Anacua is part of that Equity Committee and also a technical committee as well. And so when it comes to talking about equity, we do have these citizen-led, resident-led committees that are thinking about these issues, and I know that has been a discussion in the committees. The last thing on Breckenridge, Molly, is, in the grand scheme of things, these are very, very sensitive trees because they're heritage trees. But I know that these are not the only trees that matter to us, and so, like I mentioned, one tied back to the resiliency fund that's going to be part of the next year's budget. Reducing the urban heat island effect is going to be critical, and we can do that by increasing our tree canopy, not just at Breckenridge, but citywide.
Thank you. Just to answer that question too about Breckenridge Park. So we know the next step, the plan that it's not finished clearly, but the plan that they're proposing will go to the Texas Historic Commission next. And so that is another opportunity to plug in and say we do not approve this plan as citizens who care about our park. So I want to make it clear that yes, right now it is in City of San Antonio control, but there are opportunities further at the state level. I think it's a larger process now. We're trying to get, I spoke to Assistant City Manager David McCary, I think last week at a committee, and he said he's going to send us the packet that they're sending to THC soon, and we can give that to anyone interested prior to it going to THC. So just letting you know, there are other opportunities to plug in, and we would love to have your support in preserving those trees and giving more feedback on that plan, because we also agree it's not the best.
I saw a hand in front.
Yeah, hey, Rudy and Anacua. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts on how the rate advisory committee process is going, and also our other panelists as well. How do you guys think about kind of this public input process of looking through different portfolios, et cetera, see how CPS should proceed with, more clean energy or less or whatever. But I'm curious, Anacua, your experience on the rate advisory committee. I know you guys are coming up on a decision hopefully in the next month or two. I'm really curious how you've thought about the process.
Yeah, I think it's really important to point out that tying back to the CAP committees and the climate action plan, and folks mentioning that there are committees for communities to participate in, it's really important to note that these committees are only advisory. We don't hold any real power. So what we're seeing, what's happening with the Brackenridge trees and the climate action plan was brought up, we're talking about electric vehicles right now. So just so that you know, Molly, there's a disconnect from the situations going on in real time versus what committees focus on. With regards to the rate advisory committee, I really do think that it is a very arduous process that is being super jam-packed. And so I don't think that we're taking enough time, specifically with this big charge of charting our power generation for the future. I really would like to have seen more participants submit modeling for alternatives to carbon markets, which is something that we can't really get away from. I feel like I am an outlier in the space. It often speaks to situations dealing with colonization and displacements of our communities and how all that factors into what is a fossil fuel economy. I'll go off for 3 minutes on tangent and then it's just like, anyway, next person. Not saying that I don't feel heard, but these are existential situations that need to reshift and refocus. I don't think that's anything that can come from the rate advisory committee, in all honesty, but I am passionate and willing to undergo that process and do my best for my district in representing. There is an educational barrier. There's only so much technical jargon that I can take in the time, and some of these books that last one was like 100 pages plus. And you do have a glossary, but the technicality of it does leave most of us. I'm going to say most of us. And so I think that, yeah, if we're to do if we're to do good by the community, I think we need a longer process. And I think that we do need to educate the RAC members. There are some farces and some flat-out lies that are perpetuated and expressed on the RAC, and that's just something that, how do we combat that ignorance is quite difficult. And looking to Rudy to see if that process can change. I mean, why are we moving so fast? I know that there is a timeline, but specifically the meetings, especially meetings that are set up via Zoom or WebEx, I think just don't fully capture the best scenario for us to educate ourselves and to move forward.
So, I know the RAC has been frustrated, with just the amount of information that we have to kind of try to educate the RAC on so they feel like they're making an informed decision. I hear you. We started this conversation off tonight with the clock is ticking, right? So for me, if I have to shut down my coal operation to move to something else, whatever that something else is, I've got to start building that today if I'm gonna be able to rely on it 3, 4, 5 years down the road, if we're gonna move away from Spruce 2 as a coal unit to whatever else we're gonna replace it with, then I've got to start ordering equipment and turbines and things that, will allow me to keep our system reliable, because if we shut down every plant we had and we bought all our power on the market, there's only so much power to be bought, right? The direction that the board gave us on, we're going to do a public process and we're going to set up a rate advisory committee to facilitate that public process. You're right, there are 21 people on that rate advisory committee with 21 different opinions, and they, from the far left to the far right and everything in between. People believe what they believe, and that's kind of the nature of our society today, right? So we're trying to balance all that. We're trying to not influence outcomes and present you with information so we can get, kind of unencumbered feedback, so that I can go and present it to my board and say, look, here's what the community said, that they, the road they want us to go down, which is, in our own right, an integrated resource planning process. We're not good at it. First time we've ever tried to do it this way. So, we're doing the best we can. My team, we're working hard and we're putting in a lot of hours outside of, the things that we do to just keep, the lights on. But we're trying our best to provide you with an ability to make an informed decision. But the clock is ticking. I have to get some of these decisions made in order to move forward so that, I can execute on that. All I want to do is run this utility company in a manner that our community can feel good about. That where you feel and Reed and everybody else on the rate advisory committee and my 900,000 customers feel like CPS Energy is listening. They haven't been in that place, quite frankly, for a lot of years now, and we're trying to pivot that direction, but it's a transformation that's not easy. And I think, in spite of the frustration, I think the rate advisory committee is doing a really great job at trying to get there. I know it's hard. It's not easy. I've got an electrical engineering degree, and I know our team gets technical. But I think y'all are giving it a really good go, and I appreciate that.
Do you have a response to his presentation on fracked gas?
Just a sec. I want to just make sure that everybody has a chance to ask a question that hasn't already. Yes. Hi, my name is Valerie Morales. I'm a community organizer, and I have been for about probably more than 15 years. So we talked about how everybody's going at and doing the best that they can. But I'm really concerned about the community, the people that are being directly affected by the contamination that's being distributed on the southeast side of town, directly around Lake Calaveras Lake. Around some of the work that I've been doing recently, actually, they individually, 2 different fishermen informed me. One used to work for the city. He works through a fishing program now. He said a bunch of his fishing buddies are ending up with lung cancer. They're not smokers. They're just happen to be fishing in that area. And also to another separate fisherman who mentioned that they knew something was going on because the fish that were pulling out of the lake were turning up tarry black in the inside when they would open them up. So he doesn't eat the fish, but he is aware that it has been going on for a while, had been requesting tests be done on the lake for years, he said. I guess it was happening during COVID. So this is something ongoing and very concerning to me. And I feel like it's being downplayed or not mentioned at all. And I'm really concerned with that narrative because it pretty much glosses over the people that are being directly impacted by the decisions that are being made by people in charge. Thank you.
I guess my response to that would be that we do water testing in Calaveras, constantly. We test the fish. We do all the things that the community would expect of us in being an operator on that lake. So to the extent people are pulling fish out and, have questions, I would tell you, let us know. I mean, call us and, we'll work through that. I have not seen any evidence of that, but I'm not saying anybody's lying. All I'm saying is nobody's come to us with, that information. I will tell you that, our coal plants, they're permitted. They're permitted by the Environmental Protection Agency. They're permitted by TCEQ. Spruce 2 in particular has every, environmental protection equipment on it that we can possibly put on it. But community, when they made the decision in 2004-5 to build Spruce 2 in particular, Spruce 1 in the 90s, and now we're talking about moving away from it. And as a community-owned utility, that is our job, is to take feedback on how you want us, to provide the power that you need and, figure out how to make that work. And that's where we are. But I can promise you that, we're operating all of our plants within the permit limits that, we're given by the environmental, regulatory agencies, and we're doing the best job to be good stewards of our environment and those assets, within those permit limits. And, so I appreciate, again, we're here to listen, and, it's a conversation we've had about ensuring that, we're doing the fish testing and we're doing things that, that give our community comfort that we're paying attention to those issues.
Can I ask, real quick, just if there's a specific department or number that people can call to report things like that?
Yeah. So, we'll get you that information, but we've got an environmental director, Carmen's part of that team, and those are the folks who would look into that, so. Yeah.
And then I just have to say, there is monitoring that is done, and it is showing violations of federal pollution limits. And I gotta refer you here to a report by the Environmental Integrity Project. I just pulled it up. You can go to ashtracker.org. You can go there right now and search for Calaveras. There are 21 groundwater monitoring wells around the spruce plant, and 20 of them have monitored for pollution above federal advisory levels for pollutants like lithium, cobalt, sulfate, radium, boron. The data is there. It is publicly available, ashtracker.org. Go check it out. It is 2016 through 2019. We have been looking at the data from the last couple of years beyond 2019, and it's not any different.
I guess my only response to that would be, we've gotten no violations from the Environmental Protection Agency or anybody else for exceeding some limits. So again, if we did, I would tell you we did, but we haven't, so.
Yeah, so these are advisory levels. It's not going to trigger a corrective action, but it's an advisory for pollutants that are associated with all sorts of negative health outcomes, including cancer.
Marisol, can I make a quick comment? Just a quick clarification. When the spruce coal plants were built, I just want to caution around which community approved that project, because the climate justice community was staunchly against it. I know there were some environmentalists, white environmentalists specifically, who were okay with the spruce coal plant in exchange for 1,000 trees or 100 trees, I don't know how many. So climate justice specifically community, I would say they were staunchly against, they were not listened to, and so here we are talking about spruce coal plant.
All right, seeing Barbara's hand up. Did you still have a question?
I was wanting to ask something from CPS. Frankly, I find it hard to get into CPS. Both SAWS and CPS are really hard to get into unless you stay on the phone and keep asking a lot of different people. They kind of feel sorry for you, and they find the person that needs to hear it. I just wanted to let you know that. But also, during the debacle we had energy-wise a few years ago, one thing I noticed was that these large high-rise office buildings up and down Broadway were lit up. And so is that one of the things that the councilman was talking about, some way to, I mean, do they have a right to do that and so you can't cut them off? Or do they need to keep something warm? I mean, they were even empty most at the time. So is there something we don't understand about that conservation piece?
Yeah, so going back to Yuri, again, number one, while you plan for, you kind of plan for the worst event you've ever experienced, and we, as a state, we never experienced that particular scenario where we had across the state 20,000 megawatts of power offline, and it being, in the teens across the entire state in New Mexico. Again, it was a very, very unusual event. We have a conservation, we have what we call a demand response program, where we actually pay customers to come offline when we need the power. And that's a percentage of customers, I don't know, we've got one of the biggest programs in the state, it's like 200 megawatts. Includes residential, that we can actually allow us to move their thermostats up a few degrees to get some power back so we can redirect. The downtown system is a very technical, it's a lot different from any other part of our community because you've got like triple redundancy. So, you don't turn off that system because to get it back on is almost, it's really, really difficult. Well, since that event, and during that event even, we had a whole team under Deanna's area that was calling folks saying, hey, we need you to turn off your lights, we need you to flip breakers. UTSA had their intramural field was on, and I got a call from Senator Menendez, hey, you need to get on UTSA. We asked them to turn their lights off. So it was a very voluntary, situation in that moment where we were trying to get businesses to turn their lights off because at the end of the day, we were in a state, emergency where, even if we wanted to bring it back on, we couldn't because the state was forcing us to, to manage the outages, to try to keep the system from failing, which across the state, which it almost did. So today, we've got a much more robust program. We've had time now to talk to customers about, hey, we've got a kind of an energy partners program now, where we'll give them notice if everybody who in here gets their their emails or text messages when weather's coming. We have, both residential and commercial versions of that, and we can tell our customers, hey, it's going to be really cold. Why don't you turn your parking lot garage lights off, or whatever the case might be. They all have most of the downtown office buildings have energy management systems. They can actually control that if we give them a heads up that we're going to need it, because not everybody participates in that formal demand response program. So I think we've come a long way. I think we have the 200 megawatts of formal demand response, and I think we got somewhere in the neighborhood of another 150 megawatts of voluntary reduction, and all of that helps. So I feel better that our customers are paying more attention, primarily because we've worked harder to communicate with them when we think there might be an emergency. But again, that was such an unprecedented event that it exposed a lot of opportunities we had to get better, and we've tried to do the work to make that happen.
I think in the back I haven't seen you ask a question.
Could y'all speak to the IRA a bit more? Because I agree with Adrian what he said earlier, that this seems like a very good opportunity for public utilities nationwide and CPS. So can we hear a bit more about the opportunities of the IRA, and also if CPS is fully, looking at the IRA and what they can pull from the IRA to decarbonize our system?
Yeah, so I agree with everything that was said. The IRA, we are organizing. Kathy Garcia, my federal and state, VP who handles our policy work, with Jonathan Tijerina, who's our VP over, technology. We've got a group that we pulled together that includes, consultants at the federal level that are going to help us chase that money. A lot of that money, there's two, I forget the second acronym, IILA, is that it? IIJA and the IRA. There's an infrastructure program and there's the Inflation Reduction Act program. And both of those are going to provide opportunities for CPS Energy long term. Today I was talking about being at the city. the city and CPS Energy are coming together. We're going to work on this together to try to chase every real opportunity there is. And, right now, the federal guidance is still being worked on. So, we're, in a couple of weeks, we're going to try to go up to DC together and actually go meet with the DOE and folks that are going to be making this decision so that we're on the front end of that. But I feel we're probably more prepared than a lot of communities, but every utility in the country, including the petrochemical companies that want to move over to hydrogen, they're going to be chasing hydrogen dollars as well. There's going to be a lot of competition, but I feel like there's going to be opportunities specifically with the DOE and the Department of Defense, we're Military City USA. We've got a lot of irons in the fire with the Department of Defense on pilot opportunities because they want to become more resilient to protect their missions and to do what they need to do, and we're going to partner with them on that. And there's federal dollars to do that. So yes, to all of the above, you can be assured that CPS Energy is going to be in line to try to put our best foot forward and bring some of those dollars home. Hey, the great thing about the IRA in particular is before we had to partner with to get the best price on solar and wind for that matter. Now we're actually going to invest and we're kind of transition some of our employees that right now work on fossil fuel based plants over into the renewable space. So that we can start to learn and grow in that regard. So I would expect us to own some solar facilities in the near future.
And if I could just say a little more, didn't get there in my first 2 minutes, right? But a little more about the credit program that is similar to the production tax credit. This is for investment in clean energy. To start off, there is a 30% credit. Right, for qualifying programs, right? Capital investment in renewable energy, so solar, wind, battery storage, a couple of other types of sources. 30% right there, right? There's an additional 10%, as I mentioned earlier, if it's manufactured domestically, so U.S. Steel. There's an additional 10% if it is done in what is called an energy community. And this is a community that has significant employment in the energy industry, but also has unemployment above the national average. And the community around Calaveras qualifies for all of that. So we could get at least 50% of the cost of capital investment in renewable energy projects in the Calaveras area paid for by the federal government. And I also was not able to say earlier, but I got to thank my colleagues at Sierra Club and Emma Pabst, who I'm subbing for. She could not be here tonight, but I got to thank them for all of that research. And then the last thing I will say is that the state is taking a very dim view of these opportunities. It may not surprise you to learn that there are some folks in state leadership that consider acceptance of federal funds to be a mark against them. And so we need to pay attention to what is coming out of the comptroller's office, for example, and state leadership about all of these opportunities. They belong with the local entities that understand what great opportunities they are. They belong with CPS, with San Antonio, and so that's all I'll say.
All right. I see, yes, one person I haven't seen before. And then if there's nobody else that hasn't asked a question yet, then I'll move on to folks that have asked a question. So.
Hi, my name is Sophie's boyfriend. So I grew up in San Antonio, and there's learned behaviors, and I wasn't going to come to this meeting, I came with her, but something I noticed since I lived overseas and came back here, specifically living in Germany, is, and I saw somebody doing it when I walked in here, leaving people's cars idling when they're sitting in there. I got it if it's 105 out, or if it's like 30 degrees, but we get in that habit. It's a learned habit here, growing up here, because fuel is cheap. And we just leave our cars running, and that's another thing you can do as an individual and tell your friends to stop doing. Quit leaving your cars idling. So it wasn't really a question for the panel, it's just more of a comment on learned behavior growing up here in the States and keeping our cars idling when we don't need to. It's actually illegal in Germany.
Who was it? Let's find out.
On Ozone Action Days, I will say that's actually in our messaging when we tell people what they can do on Ozone Action Day is to not idle. So I will say that we try really hard to educate our customers in that regard.
Okay. Yes. Is your name?
Okay, I'll pass it to Meredith and then to Hannah.
Yes, I
Cool.
saw.
Okay, I'm with you on that because I lived in the East Coast and when it was cold, like you would go to the store and they would not have the heater on. You go to HEB and they have the heater on full blast, so I guess that would be something that we could work on. This goes to Rudy, is what does your community engagement plan look like? Because I would like to see more people at these conversations that we're having, and I'll pass it to the next person.
Again, I would say that I think we heard the message loud and clear that we've got to do a better job communicating with our customers. I've talked about the emails and the information we try to send out because we want our customers to in advance if they have a plan that they need to employ to get somewhere safe or to go stay with a family member, they know rain's coming, so they want to get home, and not be out on the streets. We're trying to provide them. We haven't hired a meteorologist, and it's been great because we've got as much information as we've ever had now that at the end of the day benefits our customers. We have completely revamped our community engagement program, and one of the things that we're trying this year as part of the RAC process on generation planning is we're hosting a series of open houses, right? So rather than do a public input session where me and our board sit up here and there's a microphone and you hear a presentation from us and then you give us an hour worth of your mind. We're actually we just like we're doing here, we have tables set up and we have information and we're trying to put out as much information as we possibly can so we can enter a dialogue and get real feedback. I do better one-on-one with people than being on WebExes or stuff like that. So I was like, hey, let's just host a 2-hour town hall and invite folks into the CPS Energy building and let's educate them on things and get their feedback. So we're trying some new things that I think reflect a true public kind of input gathering process. And when we present all of the information to the board, the RAC's recommendation, the survey work that we've been doing, the input we've gotten from what do you call them, not marketing sessions, but the focus groups that we do, in addition to the RAC's input, we're going to hand that to our board in an unsolicited, kind of unfettered, unchanged manner and say, hey, here's all the feedback we got from the community, here's the RAC's recommendation, here's our recommendation, board members do your thing. And I think that's going to move us in a better place pretty quickly.
I was going to do a quick time check. Oh, sorry.
I've got a microphone, so is it okay?
I just wanted to do a quick time check. We have about 5 minutes left, so we'll do, I know y'all have been patiently waiting, so we'll do Meredith and Molly. And then we have a closing statement from Liliana. Is she here? Okay, awesome. So be ready in like a couple minutes. Okay.
Thank you. I'm going to try to make this as quick and as fast as possible, but I realize that I'm lifting up some issues that are much deeper and take time. I think one of the things that you've inherited has to do with the fact that the business model at CPS has been backwards looking. And we've gotten to a stage where we can't afford to keep doing it that way. We have to be much more forward-looking. That's a little bit scarier, but I think that we should have multiple ways by which we are accomplishing the new next resources. And so I think that one of the things that's really good about the new resource opportunities is that they don't require putting vast amounts of money into a building and an apparatus that you have to take years and years and years to pay for and so forth. A lot of what we can do right now is much more likely to be effective, and especially I'm talking about developing microgrids in the city as a way of creating a much more resilient way of handling our electricity. And some of that's going on already. For example, the students at Trinity are starting to talk about having a campus-wide microgrid like they have at the University of Texas in Austin. And if we have more and more of those kinds of things happening, it would be the kind of old-fashioned, well, let's throw X billion of dollars onto a plant, but it's something that could be done quickly, could be motivated quickly, and the more we get involved in that, and I noticed that the speaker who was talking to is it called the Brattle Company that was informing he has all kinds of really good data about the extent to which what they call prosumers, in other words, the people who are both producing electricity and are consuming electricity. There's one of our best assets to go forward, and we'll have more renewable energy that way quickly.
I'll just say one thing really quickly because I don't know if there's any other questions, but yes, Dr. McGuire, I agree with you. We've got to upgrade our computer systems, which I've spent a lot of time talking about. It's going to be a hundreds of millions of dollar project because right now I know where the solar is on my distribution network. I can't see it, and I can't send a signal and pay customers for that generation when I need it. And upgrading our systems will allow us to get on the other side of where we are today, and I can actually use that as a power plant so I don't have to build. I'm with you. I don't want to have to build the power plant and shut it down early again. Don't want to put our customers in that position, but technology is going to have to help us get there. We're talking about microgrids with the military. We're talking about microgrids with saws. I met with the developer last week who's talking about doing a microgridded subdivision community on the south side of town. How fantastic is that? So I'm with you. We're on board with figuring out how to get microgrids as part of our generation, resource strategy. But it's going to require systems that we don't have in place today that we're working really hard to figure out right now. So I agree with you 100%. I think it's a great opportunity.
And if I can just add something very quickly onto that, another version of that same technology will allow us to do something else that is similar to what you're talking about. We typically think of energy storage as these massive, hundreds of millions of dollars of battery projects. But the fact is, in a couple of years, we're going to have a distributed storage network around San Antonio in our electric vehicles. And if we have the technology to take advantage of those as distributed energy storage, that's another resource that we have available in just the next couple of years.
All right, time for one more question. Molly, actually I want to check and see, Hannah, is that?
Yeah.
Did I get your name right? I thought I recognized you. Yeah. I know you had a question and you didn't get a chance to.
Just based on what you said, Adrian and Rudy, I'm like, my body's having like these intuitions. I'm having a hard time kind of listening. I want to ask for your all's help. Adrian, I feel like you're alluding to some blocks. Like there's a great idea, there's opportunities, there's finance support, but there are like these blocks. So is there like an elephant in the room? Like there's certain people on the board, because I feel like Rudy demonstrates some interest, but then I keep hearing, oh, but my board, they're working really hard on it. So I'm like, trying to have some compassion. Is Rudy in between a rock and a hard place? At times it only has a certain kind of decision-making power. I want to get insight from Adrian and Anacua, who are on the ground, maybe Chris a little bit, and then if Rudy would like to answer. Thank you.
Yeah, I certainly would not and could not identify in individuals, but I will say that the elephant in the room in Texas is the fossil fuel industry, which has almost complete control over decision making in the state right now.
Definitely the fossil fuel industry, but also to a lot of these renewable energies, they come with a price tag. So we're talking about microgrids. That is pretty expensive, and I'm learning it is so because at Southwest Workers Union, we are in the beginning phases of establishing a resilience hub on the east side. And so Southwest Workers Union would transform into a resilience hub, and with that, we want to be able to provide a microgrid so that we can provide energy in the time of need to our neighbors. That price tag is in the millions of dollars, and so we are an organization that runs on a budget of less than $1 million annually, and so there are opportunities we may not be well connected to, and pieces like the IRA, Inflation Reduction Act, they have good components, but ultimately they are a product of the fossil fuel industry, and elected leaders who are either Republican or Democrat who do not serve our interests in actuality. And so in order for a just transition to kick off, we need a more robust community participation, community plan. We're on the ground, it's really difficult. Our communities are faced with so many obstacles and burdens that thinking about the climate crisis may not be on the front of their mind, but it's something that they experience every day. Those conversations are long conversations. They take so much time and effort, and we just don't have the resources and the capacity and the money to be able to make gains and to have pieces like microgrids and electric cars. Those are things that many of us will never be able to afford, solar panels. And so we're hoping, Southwest Workers Union and myself, that we can tackle pieces in the just transition, pieces of a regenerative economy, that we could find alternative ways to have income and to take care of ourselves so that we could build power ourselves, power ourselves. I don't think in the state we have the right to produce our own power, and I think that is something that in our future we really do want to attain.
Yeah, and something that I learned from working at Rewired America is that the fossil-free future that we want looks like a 100% clean energy grid and appliances that run on that clean energy. And around the country, there's a lot of people who are already on board with this and moving local governments and state governments to do it so that it can be like a possibility. Like Anacua said, electric vehicles are not affordable, so that's where the government has to step in and provide tax incentives or rebates or whatever to make it more affordable for more people. And so what we need here is more people who are on that train and willing to organize and do the things that we need to do. So if you're here, thank you, and then go home and go talk to whoever you can and Google things together. Google what a heat pump is, or what a microgrid is, or what community solar is, so that we can all start to have momentum for these things to happen.
Join us for public comment at the next Rate Advisory Committee meeting this Thursday, 3 p.m. You can sign up for public comment Friday before 1 p.m. Right?
I've never seen Reed turn anybody away, so. Let me just say this. My board right now has been supportive of the work that we're trying to do I'm looking towards the future. I don't want to look back. I want to make the decision we need to make, and I want to be the utility company that our customers want to be, and they've been supportive of that. We have limits. Our customers, the only money that we have coming in outside of potential funding opportunities at the federal level is from our customers. So I don't have unlimited resources. I have to make the smart decisions with the dollars I have that move us in the right direction. Talked about battery, storage in general. All 4 storage. We're actually going to make some sizable investments in storage that make our renewables more valuable, and dispatchable potentially over the long term. But you kind of got to make step progress as we go. So, and to the extent any of these decisions require rate support, where we have to ask for more, resources from our customers, I got to go to City Council for that. So I'm kind of big on just kind of talking through the process because, I think in the past, the CEO doesn't have quite as much authority as everybody gives us credit for. I've got a board that I have to, take my signals from, present. They give me policy direction, and then I got to go, and prove my case up to the City Council. And that's the great thing about a community-owned utility. The community decides whether they agree with the direction that we're taking the utility. I think we're getting on a better path than maybe we've been on in the past. It's a lot of hard work, but you're here. This is probably more folks that I've seen in a community event like this in a while. So, and I know you're here on your time. Thank you for taking time to listen. to what I have to say, and I appreciate my panelists today. We're doing the best, we're trying the best we can to get there. So I appreciate y'all's continued input and patience, and I think together we're going to make some progress here.
I'm really sorry, I have a hard stop because I have a sick 3-year-old at home being cared for by a 14-year-old. So those of y'all that have questions still, maybe just after we break formally, just to continue the conversation that way. I did want to invite Mediana at this time to kind of close us out with a statement. Thank you.
Can I say something really quick? We are a community-owned utility, but when the community came together to challenge the structure of CPS Energy in our fight to gain public control of our utility, specifically the Board of Trustees, we were met with a lawsuit after working really hard during the pandemic when there's not even a vaccine, right? And a lot of us didn't even know it was the beginning phases of COVID. We gained and we got 16,000 petition signatures of residential ratepayers who said they wanted structural changes. CPS and the city of San Antonio went behind our backs and sued us, and that lawsuit is still in court. And so we are a public utility to a certain extent, and that is the truth.
Hi, y'all. My name is Lillian White. I'm an educator and a member of Climate Justice San Antonio. I want to close this program out first by thanking all of y'all for being here. I know it's been a really long day for many of us, and your dedication is sincerely appreciated. Secondly, I want to share some great relevant news that I recently read about. The coal-powered plant in Northwest Texas is going to be retired by 2028 and replaced with renewables. This switch is estimated to save their customers in Texas and New Mexico more than $70 million. I want to rephrase that. A utility provider more than 4 times the size of CPS Energy just committed to switching to renewable energy, and in the process will save their customers tens of millions of dollars. Y'all's presence and input here, in addition to the current results of CPS Energy's recently released Generation Planning Survey, show that the people of San Antonio want the same. And by the same, I mean we want system reliability, we want affordability, and we want environmental sustainability. According to the most recent survey results, San Antonians consider these to be the 3 most important objectives and how CPS Energy should plan to direct the future of powering San Antonio. I vehemently hope that CPS Energy is sincere in their resolve to follow our wishes. Because right now, when I think of CPS Energy and system reliability in the same sentence, I grieve for the victims of Storm Uri. Right now, when I think of CPS Energy and affordability, I think of the inequitable rate structure that favors higher income, higher usage customers. Right now, when I think of CPS Energy and environmental sustainability, I don't. But I do have faith in people power, and I hope that these town halls and outreach efforts are a sign that CPS Energy will follow the direction that the people have chosen and light the way to a clean, affordable, and sustainable future in San Antonio. Thank y'all again for taking the time to show up, keep speaking up, keep showing up, and we will always appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight at the end of a long day. Please feel free to continue the conversation. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.